Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ubuntu Touch Q&A, the UBports Foundation show discussing the development of Ubuntu Touch and our community's questions. This is episode 105, streamed live on July 31st, 2021. My name is Dalton, and joining me this week is Alfred.
Hello, everyone.
You're funny. We have a big roundup of news and stuff to get into today, so why don't we just do it? By the way, if you're interested in this Ubuntu Touch stuff, you like what we're talking about here and you want to try it out on your device, you can go to devices.ubuntu-touch.io to see if your device is supported. If it's not on the list, you're going to need to make a custom image for it. And you can go to the porting documentation at docs.ubports.com/porting to learn more about that. I lied, Alfred. We're starting with something else. That porting documentation I just mentioned, yeah, that's like brand new and revamped. It's got so much more content in it now. So you better go over to docs.ubports.com/porting to check it out. Even if you don't want to use it at all, you just need to look at Ari's documentation and go, that's good documentation. But if you did actually use it, we would like that too. We gave Nikita access to the system image service, so watch out, everyone, this week. So he's been adding more devices than we've been able to do before. So never been a better time to be a porter. Never been a worse time to be that server, though. It is not.
It can handle it.
It can handle it. Yeah, we ordered it exactly for that purpose. Yeah, it's really cool stuff. You got to check out the porting documentation. You just got to do it. Thank you to Peter for oh, did I just dox? Oh well. Oops. For checking it out and reviewing it, and thank you to Ari for spending months of time on making the porting documentation better. Y'all better check it out.
Oh, yeah.
So this week, going completely off the rails here, was the Annapurna Interactive Showcase. Annapurna Interactive is a games publisher, and they announced an expansion for Outer Wilds, which is easily my favorite game of all time that I have ever played, and I love it. Coming out on September 28th, I'm really excited. But you know what I'm going to play that game on? There's no Linux port of it. So I'm going to play it using Proton, just like I did the base game. Now, with the Steam Deck coming out, there's been a lot of discussion about Proton recently. Proton is it's a piece of software, a huge bundle of softwares that allows you to play Windows games on many common Linux distributions, Ubuntu, Debian, Arch, SUSE. And it's made by Valve. Now, the Steam Deck is coming out, and it's a new console, a new portable console for Steam and anything else. They say it's just a PC, so you can install whatever you want on it, but it's going to be running Linux, and it's going to be running Proton. And in all the developer documentation for the Steam Deck, they only mention Proton. Oh, and also native apps work too, I guess. And that's been an interesting thing for the Linux community to get a hold of, the desktop Linux community. As, we kind of look through and say, well, these are apps that, well, they're running on Linux, but they aren't like really running on Linux. They aren't native. But does that matter? And what happens to the people who are making Linux ports of games when Proton is good enough that you don't need to make a Linux port of a game anymore? And this has been a fascinating thing to watch the desktop Linux community go through, because it's the same thing that the UBports community keeps going through with Anbox and now Wadroid. So much like Proton is a way to play Windows games on Linux or run other Windows apps. It's a fork of wine with some more other goodies packed in. Codeweavers worked on it, the people who make wine. Collaboro that worked on it as well. So it's not like it was completely out of the blue. And this is a discussion that's been happening. Well, if you can just make a Windows app, why don't you make a Linux app? The same thing is happening in the UBports community over and over again. Well, if we have Anbox or now Waydroid, a way to run Android apps on Ubuntu Touch or any Linux operating system, well, why are people going to make native apps? What does that mean? And it's kind of it's been something that I've kind of discussed with myself and discussed with Alfred and discussed with everyone else. And it all comes down to something pretty basic about them. Because the thing is, it may make it less appealing to make native applications, but it also gives us applications that we would never get otherwise.
Right.
Things like, I think, WhatsApp, banking applications, payment applications, if we can manage to pass through NFC stuff correctly, even though there's still the problem of it might not pass safety net, so you might not be able to run all banking apps depending on how restrictive your bank is, but, details. These are apps that Ubuntu Touch or Mobian or Postmarket OS are just never going to get, period. Much like Linux was never going to get the BioShock Remastered Collection. Pretty sure that one's not native. Or Outer Wilds. And something pretty common for our community to do in this situation is to say, well, you shouldn't use those apps. You shouldn't use WhatsApp because it's a privacy nightmare. Which may be true. But something that I think people don't see when they say things like that to people is what a privileged position you can be in to say something like that. For me, I'm in a very, nice position where I don't need to use WhatsApp on the daily. I don't need banking apps on the go. I don't need a payment terminal on the go. But I've talked to people, say, from Argentina, where you cannot carry enough cash at one time to buy yourself lunch because the rate of inflation is so high. Their cash is worth so little that you basically need to have something that can pay a large amount of cash without carrying a large amount of cash. So, bank cards or payment app on your phone is the only way. It's something that we don't see in some places where cash still works. While I was taking a small trip through Germany, there was just all that you see everywhere. This was last year, before, everything hit. What you would see is places didn't have, call us, text us. They had WhatsApp us. And that was your only option to talk about them. COVID-19 tracing apps, all these things that just aren't going to come to Ubuntu Touch. We don't realize that we're in a privileged position to not use them. Which, Ubuntu Touch is great for us. Because we don't need to use those applications even as a backup. People are mentioning so many things, airport entry in some places, just so many things that you just need that Anbox is going to, Waydroid, may make possible for us to use on Ubuntu Touch, which opens Ubuntu Touch to a lot more people using it.
Definitely. And there's also the point of, there are people saying that why would you want to use that if you can't have it natively? It's the same argument that we had a few weeks back on the Q&A talking about why use Ubuntu Touch compared to Android or iOS. And it's, again, this being practical versus being idealist in some sense. And I count myself to the idealist group, but I have to acknowledge that for many people out there, it's not feasible to just carry a phone that is not able to run the applications that you need in your daily life that makes you, quote unquote, compatible to society.
Isn't that sense. Weird?
Yeah.
A lot of people are like really down about this, that this is going to be required, but things always change. So
Yeah.
this might change. It's just not there now.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful for the future, just not there at the moment.
Right. So again, I mean, when we can appreciate the fact that we can live with our Ubuntu Touch phones fully and freely, even though we might be using some proprietary applications, not free in that sense, but we can use applications that we require in our daily lives, then I think that's a better situation than not having those applications that allow you to basically pay for lunch at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's kind of my piece on Waydroid right now. I'm really excited to see where it goes. Seeing the updates from the team has been really cool. I'm glad that our community decided to crowdfund such an effort, and I'm glad that they started it as an independent effort, partially so that I didn't need to manage it, but just so that things can blossom and bloom outside of the UBports Foundation needing to be the centralized structure, which I think is really good for the community. I think it's really good for Ubuntu Touch, and I think it's really good for the foundation itself. So, yeah, that's our piece on Anbox today, Waydroid, that I want to talk about. This is good.
It's going to take you a while.
It's just like the Unity 8 Lumiri thing. I'm going to be saying it for years, but that's our piece on that. But speaking of native app development, because we aren't standing still in that area either, and we're always going to want native apps because they work better, they look better, they, people want them because they work the way they expect them to, unlike sometimes an Android app. And a lot of times they're open source, which is pretty good for the idealist side. There's been a lot of things happening in app development this week, 2 weeks, and Matteo Salta has rounded up for all of us. He says, the Godot game engine has seen a lot of exciting progress with the UBports-Godot project. Thank you to ABMYII, and check out the Godot 3D test from Pavel Prosto. This test shows how well our devices perform with various 3D graphics and gives you a quick way to test out Godot games. Just throw your PCK file into the app and see if the game will run on Ubuntu Touch. Games on Ubuntu Touch using the engine include Bug Bounty by Marquis Kurt, Liner, and Circle Jump. This is an exciting way to bring games to Ubuntu Touch. And I've been loving, there are no games, and now there's so many games in the open store. And it's really cool. I'm really excited to see this Godot project continue. There is now an app to scan and display eView COVID certificates. It's called Corona app. It's in the open store, as are a bunch of the apps that I just mentioned. And Matteo says, if I can put in something that I ported over, check out the point-and-click adventure game Dead Ascend. It's made open source from Larpone with the QAK, called the QML Aid Kit, which are components for 2D game making. So that's cool. There's another, like I said, it's just like all the games are here all of a sudden. I think our community is getting bored. Oh, another thing. I know that I know at least one user is going to be really happy about this. Qt Webview is now in the Ubuntu Touch image, so you can start using the newest framework and get Qt Webview. It's a cross-platform way to have web views in your app. And no, this one is not based on WebKit. That's Qt WebKit. It's based on Qt Web Engine, but it's a way to make a web view that goes all over the place.
It starts to get confusing with all those packages that you can have to compute.
Brad says, so many games, let's still know Cave Story. I know. If someone can port Cave Story over, I'll give you $50. I'd like to see Cave Story too. I think it's a beautiful game. I love it. Anyway. In Xennial news, we have merged a change to Network Manager, which changes how it decides to ask for. It changes how it decides to ask for passwords when it gets disconnected from a network. So I would really appreciate if over the next few days you watch your phone, make sure it's connected to Wi-Fi when you expect it to be. It's not disconnecting without asking you or anything like that. Just watch that if you're on the Devil channel or if you're on the RC channel starting on Wednesday, the 4th of August. Just take a look, keep watching it, make sure, and let us know if you see anything weird in your Wi-Fi stuff. On the upshot, if this works correctly, it will greatly reduce the amount of times that devices like the Volaphone ask for your Wi-Fi password when they wake from sleep. So I think a lot of people are going to be really excited about that, including Vala themselves. Hi. Thanks for your support. So this is all stuff done by Jose. And after a lengthy review process where I'm pretty sure I've made him more upset than I'm sorry, but we got it in. Oh, another thing. If you're using the Pine tab, soon, TM, it'll be able to rotate. I fixed that. There's a PR into device info for that. So that's a small, cool thing. Oh, right, Pine devices. That might have been really loud. I'm sorry. I have merged the 5.13 kernel for the Pine phone and Pine tab. So the kernel upgrade branch is no longer. If you update your phone, you're automatically going to be moved to Devil. Of course, things can never be easy. I've created a couple more problems. I've created a problem in particular with the Pine phone waking from sleep fast enough to receive a notification. But I think I'm going to revert the change that I did for now so that we can get back to work on it. I think we're getting close to being able to release a stable image for that, which is a pretty big deal. Pretty big deal. So if you've got a Pine phone, you should really be testing stuff out right now, trying it out, or a Pine tab. I know there aren't many of them out there, but the people who have them seem to cherish them. So yeah, a couple of improvements to that. For some reason, Bluetooth isn't working, even though it totally should. But I don't know. Work on the Pine phone. Doesn't work on the Pine tab. Haven't figured that out yet. Don't know if I'll be able to in a couple of weeks, but yeah. So there's been a lot going on.
But we won't stop there.
No, we can never stop there because we need to move on to Focal. And actually, we had a question this week. Get us excited about Focal and what's going to happen with Ubuntu Touch based on Ubuntu 20.04. And I can do that because while most of the interface stuff won't change, and it's actually best if you don't notice many things when you upgrade from Ubuntu 16.04 to Ubuntu 20.04 for Ubuntu Touch, there's going to be some pretty cool stuff coming down the pipe. For example, what Alfred's been working on?
Well, there have been a handful of things that I've been working on since the last Q&A that I joined. And first of all, it's having both Wayland and Mir client apps running simultaneously on mainline devices. That includes the PDK image running Mesa, and that includes the Pine phone running Mesa. So it's now possible to have both, and I should have prepared this a little bit, but it's now possible to have this GL Mark application, which is Wayland native, and it's running hardware accelerated right now. So it reaches its full potential, 60 frames per second. You can have Mir client apps as well running on 60 frames per second. I've tested this with QML Creator, running the shader effects example that is included in the application. Works very well, and it also works on the PDK. That includes improvements to the Lumiri shell performance as well. So what used to happen was it dropped frames while doing things like scrolling in the drawer and stuff like that.
That's what it was doing?
It was dropping frames, yeah.
Ah.
Now it is running much better, and it averages around 40 frames per second when hitting the edge of the list, just scrolling around and having it have some effects in between. So that's a bonus.
But it's smoother, you mean?
It is very smooth now.
Okay,
it's
so it's smooth, not like it's not performant, but it's smooth.
It's smooth. It lags a little bit when you drag it at the edge, but it's already lagging with input at the edge anyway, because it's having the inertial scrolling stuff running there.
Interesting.
And yeah, I mean, compared to 4 frames per second, that's a big improvement. Next up is trust prompts. And trust prompts I've been working on last week, including to some other stuff. And trust prompts are what we use to display, and for those that don't know, are what basically display permission controls above an application. They slide up and they allow you to basically allow audio inputs to work for an application interactively, so that you can decide whether you want to give the application permissions or not. And that should be working now. I have not been able to test it properly. I need to include a few changes in other places, but the trust prompt itself, the service, is running now. And Pulse Audio has also been patched to accommodate for this, so that it has the right integration points in there. It's actually good that Snap is around, because we can now drop a few patches that we don't have to maintain ourselves anymore. That's good.
Canonical kept the same hacks that they did for Ubuntu Touch, and they just left them in Ubuntu.
Yeah, right. Which is, I mean, arguably
Fine
a
by
good idea. Yeah, right. I've also tested the convergent shell on the Pine phone.
That means multiple monitors both displaying the shell.
That also includes displaying the shell on the external monitor and the touch controls on the phone, so that you can actually have the trackpad on the phone and control the external monitor, basically. And that seems to work quite well now. It's not fully finished yet, but it's certainly a start. I'll make sure to include all the changes in the next week or so and propose them. I'm pretty sure some things will get a few review comments. I already expect that, but it's good that people are taking a look at it. And finally, we have Aaron from Axolotl fame, who basically ported over the gallery app, as you can see, to Focal using the PDK, and seems to run in the dark mode. But it's a great start, and he was able to build a few components that are also required for other applications, so that things are easier for other developers. I'll take a look at including those into the repositories very soon. But it's a start, and if other people are interested in helping out, feel free to join us. I'll take a little short moment to talk about this later, because I've got plans regarding that.
All of this is stuff that we're going to be building images for soon, because Rachnan has finished the work to make a rootfs builder for this stuff that works with system image and actually allows us to ship these on the server, just like you expect any other Ubuntu Touch update. You won't be able to move off the update because system settings isn't there. So unless you know how to use system image CLI, you're stuck. So it's going to be a hidden channel that you can only get to using system image CLI. But it's pretty exciting that we're almost there. I wonder how that's going to affect storage usage on system image. It's probably going to be fine.
It'll be fine.
It'll be fine. No problems. So it's looking like we're going to be releasing maybe for mainline, but definitely for Helium 7, at least the Xperia X, because that's the one that Rachnan has to test on. And you will have to use System Image CLI to get it. And we probably won't make a big splash about it yet, but it is going to come out at least in the email updates and stuff, I'm sure. No big blog posts or anything, because if you use it, you're going to get stuck on it. It doesn't run many apps, the usual. But all this stuff, the better performance, Lomiri running as a shell that can use multiple monitors or an input device. This is all stuff you just can't get on 1604 because we're not going to put it there. So you wanted to be excited? I hope you're excited now. It's going to be some pretty cool stuff. For app developers, it also means you can use stuff like C++ 18 and 21, which is better than C++ 11. Way better. And I totally know what that means. And if you want to test out 2004 on your device, how can you do that, Alfred? I've got a laptop. I don't have any of these Ubuntu Touch devices.
Well, what you can use is the PDK, the Platform Development Kit that I've presented the last time that I was on. And it's gained a few additional features. First and foremost,
But Alfred, what is the PDK?
well, good question. The PDK is a set of commands and tools that allow you to basically spawn a virtual machine with Ubuntu Touch based on 2004. And it allows you to work on Ubuntu 2004 based Ubuntu Touch. It allows you to test packages. It allows you to test applications, and basically just have a look at the current state of affairs and how it's performing. So it has officially been released in the Snap Store. It's in the beta channel right now. I'll make sure to up that to the stable channel as soon as possible. But the great thing is it's now a strictly confined snap, which means it is running with confinement rules. It doesn't allow to break out of, assuming someone tries to break out of the VM, it's not going to have access to many outside files. It's good for security, basically speaking. It does not require an SSH server on the host, which is a bummer for some people who don't want to run an SSH server on their host, which is fair. It now uses virt.io FSD in the background.
Easy for you to say.
And it allows you to access files from the host inside of your VM so that you can do changes to the source code inside of your host and push them over to your VM. And it boots a real Lemire session now.
It boots a Ubuntu Touch session.
Exactly. You can select the phablet user. It logs you into the phablet user, and you can basically play around with it. So a lot of progress over the last few weeks, and I'm very hopeful that we're getting, now that the Halium-based images are merged, I'm very hopeful that we get acceleration in the process of making sure that everything is matching up on both the PDK mainline and the Halium images. Those should be very featureful, not soon, but they're coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really excited about the PDK stuff. It makes a lot of things that were really hard for the Xennial bring up really easy. And that's really nice. Going back to our last topic, Nico says, having C++ 17 available means I can continue getting KDE apps on Ubuntu Touch. Maybe you should try out the PDK.
Just to give it a little taste. That's a 10.
Don't remind me of that reference, Alfred. Anyway, hey, do you want to help? Like, do you want to help us make Ubuntu Touch? Well, there's a lot of ways that you can do that. So there's two sides we're going to be talking about here. On the 1604 side, the stuff that's released right now, there are some 170 pull requests that need reviewing, that are created by people for Ubuntu Touch. I am one person. And everyone else is kind of busy. So we need a lot of help from people they're testing out these pull requests, seeing how they work, if they add any warnings. But unfortunately, I can't give you much mentoring on that. So if you're interested, we have the UBports QA tool. We have a lot of PRs that need QA. I would love if someone would help. I can explain basics, how to get stuff working with it. I can't give you an in-depth tutorial, but we kind of need some help with this stuff. But on that note, if you want the instructions already provided to you, Lionel has gone and created a forum thread so that you can help testing out the MMS pull requests that enable MMS on American networks, European networks, devices that it didn't work on correctly before, when you're on Wi-Fi, stuff like that. A few cases. So if you want to check that out, I'm going to put that in the description. Those specific PRs, or literally any PR currently in the UBports organization, We need your help with that. Just comment on the PR or in the forum thread in the case of these MMS things. We really need some help testing this stuff out. It's not that hard. You might break your phone, but if that happens, you just need to use the UBports installer to go back to a safe image. It's real easy. Your data doesn't get wiped. It's really nice. We like it. We would really appreciate it, though. Now, that's on the 1604 side. The stuff that's coming out is OTA 19, 20, and, maybe some after that. But if you want to help make the future of Ubuntu Touch possible, Alfred, how would they do it?
Well, there are a few things, and we've been thinking about several ways on how to get other people outside of the core team involved in the development process of Ubuntu Touch. And for that, we're looking for a testing squad. That's an official call for help, so that people, the A team, if you will, for testing out packages for Ubuntu Touch based on 2004. So the basic task is to make sure that the Xenial-based 1604 packages run on 2004. And for that, we need a dedicated team of volunteers, not only developers. That's the key here. Not only developers, but also testers. So if people are willing to help out in those two ways, they can use the PDK and make sure that they port over and rename the software from Ubuntu and canonical branding over to Lomiri. That's a very important part for us. And testers can test those changes in the future. It's going to come up very soon. So that we, as the core development team, only have to take a last look over it, a little look over it, and make sure that everything is up to the standards that we basically require. Have everything renamed, most importantly. And then we can include those packages into Focal. So the way to do this is, if you want to help out and you want to use the PDK to do it, if you don't have a device or if you don't want to break your daily driver device, you can use the PDK to change whatever is required. Send over the link to the UBports QA group on Telegram. And make sure, if you're a tester, to UBports-build those changes and test them on the PDK yourself. You don't need much of an expertise in the command line. There's almost everything laid out in the README on the UBports PDK repository already. And if you want to help out, please make sure to test it that way and give us a hint that you have made the changes, and so that we can take a look at it and include it in the repositories. It would be really helpful if people would step up and help us in the process of porting over Xenial packages to Focal.
Who or where can they contact to get started with that?
If you want to get in touch with me or one of the developers, just make sure that you join the development group on Telegram or the UBports QA Telegram group, depending on whether you're a tester or a developer. And then we can basically juggle around those links, make sure that the testers get the links to test the changes, and then we can include them.
If they're really lost, should they just PM you to get started?
Yes, please.
Okay. Who are you?
My name is Fredl.me on Telegram. It's FREDLDOTME.
There you go. If they're really confused, but at UBports QA isn't that hard either.
Yeah,
that's what it is. UBports QA team. Darn it! Why don't we standardize these things? Anyway, we have a few more things to get to before we finish here. So I think that sounds pretty exciting. That's a pretty cool idea. I'm glad that you're talking with people about it, Alfred. Hopefully we can get some cool stuff lined up so that people feel like a really big part of something for doing this, because it is a huge part of 2004 is getting these things tested.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I am, just a little hint, I am playing around with an idea to basically appreciate the work that volunteers put into the the project if they're willing to help out. And maybe I'll put them somewhere in, I don't know. Let's just say that I have a few ideas on how to appreciate what they did for the project.
Most of what we're talking about for this stuff, Gustavo, is actually on the PDK. You don't need any device except for something with enough RAM to run a small virtual machine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of like the Hall of Tortured Souls idea, like Microsoft Office 98 did. I think it was 98. But I'll leave it up to you to decide what the design should be, because I'm sure you can do something fun.
Let's hope for the best.
Okay. Real quick, before we get on to the questions here. I would like to thank the people who make Ubuntu Touch possible. All this stuff we're talking about is made possible by, well, the people who actually do it, and also our sponsors, including Smooze, Vala, and Pine64. You can find them and all of our sponsors at ubports.com/sponsors. I'd also like to thank our community sponsors on Patreon. I'm sorry I didn't get this list updated. No, I'm mad about that. But as of a while ago, it was Travis Mackmer, Amalith, Raskignaris, and Sensfeld, Dan Trevino, Daniel Fransak, Robin Hood, Laszlo Tomas, Ian Locke, Max Fielder, A. Thiel, Casey Lambie, George Toma, Renat Mirkolev, Will Atwood, and Scott Marley. Again, I apologize if you started there and we don't have your name yet. I'm working on it. And if you'd like to join them, you can find them at UBports.com. You can find them at patreon.com/UBports for the community sponsor level, or other ways to help us out. You can find at ubports.com/sponsors. And you can also, while you're there, find all sorts of ways that you can actually, save a little money on your taxes, maybe. We are a tax-deductible nonprofit organization located in Germany. Consult your local laws for more details. uports.com/donate. We really appreciate everyone who goes over there. We appreciate everyone who has donated. A huge thank you to all of you. All right. Let's take some questions this week. So we take these questions from our forum over at forums.ubports.com. You can head over there in the news section, usually on a Tuesday before the Q&A. You can head over there and start asking questions in the thread. We don't take them all, but we do read them all. Right. So first, S. Chad asks, would you consider hosting the Q&A on Funkwhale? You've already done a lot to help support the Fediverse ecosystem with PixelFed and Mastodon accounts. You can find those in the video description, by the way. So I figured Funkwhale would be a good fit too, for the purposes you're currently relying on SoundCloud for. S. Chad, I would love to. But, again, only one person. Florian is also only one person. And, that's our infrastructure team right now. So, I did look into Funkwhale hosting by other people, either mostly just providers, because I don't want to use another instance that we don't control for something like that. And it is significantly more expensive than SoundCloud. So, while that would be possible, I don't think we can really swing it. And we can't really swing the time needed to host our own instance. If we had someone committed to providing such an instance, we might be able to rehost on a Funkwhale, and I would give you permission to do that. Well, these things are released. No, they aren't. These are under your standard YouTube license, not CC BY, but we can give you permission. We can figure that out if you want to rehost the episodes on a Funkwhale instance. We can figure something out, but it's something that me personally, I don't really want to spend my time on. And we don't really have anyone else with time available to do something like that right now. But, we always appreciate help. Alfred, what did Krima ask?
Krama asks, how would one approach getting into contributing to core apps? These have internal dependencies and a complex file structure, it seems. Is there any documentation to read past the intro to clickable?
No. Mostly it's just clickable. I mean, all of them build with clickable now because it's the way that they get into the into the store. So you can use Clickable Desktop to test them on your computer, or you can just use Clickable to build them and run them on your device. It's not that it's really it. Like I don't like documentation or people saying things are simple, but this one is pretty simple if you can get Clickable running, because that's a command line app. It can be a little confusing for people,
Right.
and I totally get that. But it's not as easy as opening Visual Studio on something, but it's not as hard as a lot of app development tools.
Mm.
So yeah, that one's pretty easy.
The second question from Crime. Qt is an absolutely integral part of Ubuntu Touch. It is also proprietary, non-free, in both ways software. Has the project encountered any trouble with that?
I'm not sure what Qt repository you're looking at, but I'm pretty sure it's LGPL or more restrictive.
As far as I can tell, it was even before it was dual licensed in the current way. I do believe that Richard Stallman himself talked to the Qt company, whatever it was called back then, to dual license it under free software license for sure.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, they have changed the structure of Qt so that they don't release long-term support releases anymore. But it is absolutely not true that the version of Qt that is released is proprietary software. And whoever told you that needs to get off the internet. Because they've had a little too much of it. Yeah. So, absolutely not true. Qt has to release they have to release it as open source. Otherwise, the KDE Free Qt Foundation can rough them up a bit.
Yeah.
But even past that, it's free software in every sense of the word. Provoke had a question.
Some months ago, there was some talk about modernizing the push infrastructure and maybe adding web push functionality to Morph. Cool would be also progressive web app support, by the way. Have there been further developments on this?
This is a bit of a confusing thing where I say that I want to do something and that it's cool, but that doesn't actually mean that I'm going to have time to do it within the next few months. Yes, absolutely. Modernizing the push infrastructure, making the push infrastructure web push instead of the weird Ubuntu push protocol would be really good long term, I believe. With that said, we don't currently have anything available to be able to do such a thing. I know that it's something that other mobile operating systems are interested in, but similarly, right now, most of them are working on the software working more so than, things like better push notification support. And indeed, us too, we're working on getting 2004 working, and that is our biggest priority right now, rather than necessarily making the push infrastructure better. Well, I would love to do it. So Provoke, if you're interested in that kind of thing, if you understand a little bit about web push and how it can be integrated into an embedded system, we would love to have your help with that. But as it stands, I appreciate these questions. They're just a little, sometimes they get me a little, I can't do enough, that kind of thing. So I appreciate it though. 1,000 Topics has a bit of a tongue twister.
Had you ever considered to offer key-to-key people in the software world a working phone with Ubuntu Touch, or show the phone in a meeting, conference, party, second business breakfast, so that they may notice the project may show some support? Let's say like Pavel Durov, Telegram's dad, or the Spotify CEO, Netflix people to download chapters on the tablets, a bank or important company to let us create or have native apps. In less words, what do you think are missing in order to have permissions from the big companies to build, or they can build us apps for our beloved platform?
Mm-hmm. There is a bit of a... this is where it becomes a little bit difficult to message that between the UBports Foundation and the UBports community, because the UBports Foundation's mission is to make this independent mobile operating system that is free software. It also has the mission to grow this software so that it can continue making it. But ultimately, for these kinds of things to happen, there are only so many people who are paid who can do these kinds of things. And this is free software developed almost entirely by volunteers. So if someone wants to show Pavel Durov an Ubuntu Touch phone, someone who knows Pavel Durov should do that, because we don't know Pavel Durov. Might be kind of cool if we did, but we don't. Our phones would be hacked that way. If I remember that correctly. Maybe not that cool, but anyway. Off topic. The thing with these, showing things to big business people is you seem to think that we are somehow inherently more connected to the world than you are, which we're not. We have our networks, and we show Ubuntu Touch to those people all the time. They get annoyed with us. But if you have a network of people who, own a business, could make something with Ubuntu Touch, you should get in touch with them, because you having that contact to them, you knowing about Ubuntu Touch, and being able to say, this is cool, this is why, is more important than this random foundation in Germany being able to say that. So if you know any of these people, or anyone else, even a small business owner who's looking for phones that are more safe, don't track them as much, that kind of thing, we could be a really good option. And once you get them talking, the UBports Foundation can talk to them. We have a guy who talks to businesses mostly, and is able to really well message the idea that an independent mobile platform is a good thing no matter what, because the duopoly sucks. And he can kind of start from that direction. And he has a network himself, but he's also really busy. Like, really busy. So we need all the help that we can get to talk to people like that. And if you're interested, if you know someone like that, get in touch with them. They'll trust you more than they trust us as random people. So that's my piece on that. If you're interested in any more of this, I'd love to talk to you about it. About this whole weird business half of Ubuntu Touch versus the community half that I'm always trying very hard to balance and make sure that both sides feel good. We've got a mobile OS, we can keep it going, and it's community developed. All right. I think that's all. Do you have anything else, Alfred?
Not really. Other than a few questions popping up in YouTube.
Okay.
For example, from Neo, will Android/iOS-based spywares affect Waydroid?
Oh my goodness. Are they asking about this Pegasus thing? I'm very tired of people asking about Pegasus. The thing is, no computer is invulnerable is to malware. If someone wants to hack your device enough, they're going to figure out how to do it.
Right.
So while Android and iOS malware, well, I guess Android malware would run on Waydroid. Why not? It wouldn't have access to the full system, though. But, you can't just install iOS malware on Ubuntu Touch. But if someone makes malware for Ubuntu Touch, which if it gets popular enough, they will, it'll run on it. Sure.
Yeah.
So you're not automatically protected from things like Pegasus just because you use Ubuntu Touch. You're protected from Pegasus because Pegasus doesn't run on Ubuntu Touch. But if someone makes spyware for Ubuntu Touch, it would run on Ubuntu Touch.
Right.
So, we work on things like app confinement to make it less possible for a bad app to get in and look at things they're not supposed to without your permission. But that does not mean that we're immune to malware.
Right. And if you're talking about government levels of making sure that there is spyware on someone's phone.
Oh, you've already lost.
You've already lost, right?
It doesn't matter if you're using Android, iOS, Ubuntu Touch. If your adversary is the government, you've already lost. All you have to do is make one mistake, and they've got more money than you can dream of.
Right. I think there was a quote from what's his name again? Ellen Jude, who quoted it from someone else. If you're gonna be Mossaded upon.
Oh, okay.
If they want to hack you, they can hack you. So, I mean, yeah, there's nothing you can do. There's only so much we can do as developers of the
I did
password.
write a blog post on kind of touching on this stuff over at daltondur.st. The endless conundrum of creating a secure Pine phone. It's all about, okay, what is actually our threat vector? How can we solve that before moving on to these big questions?
Right.
So
right.
You might be interested in that.
It's always about the threat vector in the end. What are you trying to protect, and how are the angles of attack? So what are the attack surfaces, and how are people possibly attacking it, and what are you caring about actually on the phone?
Okay. Do we see anything else? I don't think so. Any idea how to get 3 bottom buttons with an AND box? With an AND box, it doesn't have those. Waydroid might change. I don't know. You should ask the developers.
Yep.
Which isn't us, which I'm very proud about. I'm so happy someone else is working on it. I love having contributors to the project. Anyway, okay, that should be all. Hey, if you liked what we were talking about in this episode, I will leave a link to my blog post in the description. You can find out if your device is supported over at devices.ubuntu-touch.io. You can go there, see if your device is supported. If it's not on the list, unfortunately, it's going to need a custom image made for it. All the devices there already had them made. But you can go to the new, revamped, awesome porting documentation at docs.ubports.com/porting to learn how. It's never been easier because the documentation's never been better. That doesn't mean it's easy, but it's way easier. Hey, if you liked what we were talking about and you want to listen to more of it throughout the week or get it in your social feeds, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Pixelfed, Mastodon, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Or if you want our news directly in your chat client, we've got a Telegram news channel. It's pretty cool. If you want to chat with us about anything we've talked about or Ubuntu Touch in general, you can find us on Matrix or Telegram, #UBports:/matrix.org or @UBports, respectively. Or our forum for longer form content over at forums.ubports.com. I'd like to thank you all for joining us for this episode of the Ubuntu Touch Q&A. Links to some of the things that we'll talk about will be in the description. And we will see you all in the next one. Might be a little weird. I don't know. We'll figure out the schedule. Bye-bye.
Bye.